So if you want to be an effective and successful scalper, your main job is to identify what the short-term sentiment is on any specific chart. The way I do this is by analyzing 3 major milestone levels, and I've talked about them before on this channel. The first one is the volume weighted average price. I look at this as a neutral level, so if the stock is above this level and starting to test previous highs, I can understand that the stock might start to trend upward or in an upward bullish trend. And if the stock is maintaining below the VWAP area and say starts to test previous low of the days, then I can understand that the stock is starting to trend down or bearish. Using this as a neutral level makes it really easy to use this in conjunction with other major milestone levels. And again, we're looking at it as a neutral level on that specific chart. Another level that I'm using in my trading is the high of that first opening 5 to 10 minutes. And so if a stock starts to push over the VWAP area, the volume weighted average price, and starts to test that previous opening range high, other traders are going to start seeing this thing as bullish or strong, and I can take a pullback position attacking that breakout or that potential breakout in the upward direction. The same thing can be said about the downside, but in this case we're using either a previous low of the day, the opening range low, or the previous closing price as well. The previous closing price is widely used. A lot of people on Thinkorswim have scripts to automatically document this level, as you can see here. And this is a big sentiment changing level as well. And so if a stock starts to move below the volume weighted average price and moves down to test the previous closing price, that's the stock going from green to red on the day. And so again, a lot of other traders are going to be paying attention. Some are going to be selling once that level breaks, and all of this contributes to downward or bearish momentum. So now that you have a broader understanding of how we're using these levels to profit in our trading, let's take a look at a few really nice examples so you can really reinforce and understand how to have success with these different levels and indicators. So the first example of this specific strategy is from Monday on AMC. Now you see AMC do this a ton, and it's one of the easiest ways to pick up and judge momentum on a short-term basis with stocks like AMC. And so again, you can see that opening U-shaped bull pattern here, and you can see the first thing that we talked about in that intro is the VWAP being a neutral level. So you can see when AMC opens up, it maintains below the VWAP area. So it's not neutral, it's below the VWAP area. And when it starts to push above that area, that's when the sentiment starts to change. In every one of these instances, when you see the stock actually succeed from doing this U-shaped breakout, volume needs to come in. If volume dries up on the U, on that kind of move up over the VWAP area, a lot of the time it's going to fake you out and come right back down. But if volume shows up and it starts to move up to test the opening range high level, in this case you can see it right around 37.13, then that's usually the level that you want to see break, as well as the previous closing price here at this 37.19 level. This is a really powerful example because the opening range high was right around the previous closing price. And so when we broke over both of those levels, again, you can see the volume shoot in here. You can see other traders really gain confidence in that specific direction. And if we zoom out here, you can see that the stock continued up for at least half of the day. And so you were able to predict that using the VWAP and using that opening range high level, as well as the previous closing price. Okay, so to show you another example of this same concept, but in this case, on a pretty low float penny stock like DATS. This one is only about $11 to $12 per share, and just like the last one, you can see we open up below the VWAP area. Again, we're using the VWAP as kind of a neutral level, and then we're waiting for a push above that area with volume. And so in this specific instance, you can see we were consolidating around $11. Around 9:50 market time, we got a really nice push in volume of over 700,000 shares traded per minute. And then we're looking for a confirmation over the VWAP area, and you can see we get one right around 11:40. Once we get that confirmation hold, we then push up to test not only the opening range high, which you can see in this instance right around 11:40 to 11:50, but also that previous closing price. Once we move over that previous closing price, you can see the stock actually respects that level, and a ton of traders are buying these little pullbacks. For me as a scalper, I'm buying these pullbacks and I'm scalping out around the previous high of the day up here, and I'll rinse and repeat that until it stops working. And the big thing to understand with this specific setup is that it will eventually stop working. But if you condition yourself to get out when you're supposed to on your losses, it should work at least 60 to 70% of the time. Again, at least. Usually it works more more than that, and I just keep attacking these pullbacks until it stops, riding this upward trend. But if we zoom out here, you can see once we broke over that previous closing price, we broke over the VWAP level, we continued in that upward trend for a few hours at least. And so that's a lot of pullbacks to buy into, a lot of momentum to attack. And again, the big identifying thing here is the cross over the VWAP with good volume, the break over the opening range high, as well as the break over the previous closing price. This is one of the most effective strategies I've ever traded. And again, this is on a penny stock that's 11 or 12 bucks, not on a large cap stock as well. And so the strategies are pretty universal. You just have to wait and be disciplined enough to be patient and wait for these setups to show themselves. Okay, so for my last example here, I'm using Apple, and it's a really well-known stock, and so I wanted to do an example here so you can see that this setup and strategy happens pretty consistently in the market. And so again, in this specific example, remember, we're using the VWAP as a neutral level. And so the stock opens up slightly bullish, puts in that opening range high that we can use later for that kind of U-shaped breakout pattern, and then it dips below the VWAP. And so when this happens, we need to kind of program our mind to see this pullback happening under the VWAP and to start to look for that U shape that we can use to find a breakout in. And so once we start to move back up to test that previous VWAP level as well as that previous opening range high that we talked about earlier, that's when you can see volume start to rush in. And once we get the break of that opening range high here, the next step is we want to look for the stock to actually hold confirmation over the VWAP and over the previous opening range high. I've said this before, but when this happens, when the stock pulls this U-shaped breakout, when it breaks over that opening range high, it's really indicative of a future bullish trend. And so if we zoom out here, you can see the stock actually maintain that upward trend for the rest of the day for the most part. This is really powerful if you're looking to take longer term positions as well, because once you see that sentiment change at the open, once that opening volatility and randomness has died down, the stock starts to push up and maintain that specific trend. And again, it did that for the rest of the day. And so what you can use this pattern for is to identify strength really early on and catch some of these breakouts before they actually happen. You can find the U-shaped pattern, you can wait for it to break over the VWAP and over those big milestone levels we mentioned earlier, and then when they actually hold support over those levels, that's when you can choose to attack an upward trend. And that's usually when I choose to buy pullbacks, scalp in and out over and over again, really attacking that upward trend because the trend has been confirmed with the pattern and setup that we saw earlier. And so I hope all of that makes sense. And remember, you have to be patient and disciplined enough to wait for these setups to show up. It's extremely important that you condition your brain to cut your losses when it starts to break back down underneath the VWAP in these instances, as well as be able to exit for a loss if you need to at any moment in these trades. A lot of scalpers are actually really successful. They just can't cut their losses when the time comes, and so they have these really large drawdowns in their accounts that are actually avoidable. And so remember to condition yourself through repetition to do the right things during the system and strategy, and hopefully you'll have good success like me. Of course, I can't guarantee anybody will have success with these setups and strategies. This is purely my subjective opinion on how to find the best setups using this. But remember guys, everything's a test in the market, and so be sure to test this yourself as well. And so with all that said, good luck in the market guys. Remember, we day trade these setups and strategies completely live for free every single weekday morning right here on YouTube. And so hit the subscribe button, hit the like button if you haven't already. Good luck in the market guys. Remember to protect your trading account like it's your bank account, and I'll see you all next time.